basics of building a 3D environment.
Io sento normale, è quello che mi fa arrabbiare. Aspetta, facciamo un altro test. Giusto.
Hi there. Thank you very much for playing the Beginner's Guide. My name is Davey Reedon. I wrote The Stanley Parable, and while that game tells a pretty absurd story, today I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011. We're going to look at the games made by a friend of mine named Cose. Now, these games mean a lot to me. I met Cose in early 2009 at a time when I was really struggling with some personal stuff, and his work pointed me in a very powerful direction. I found it to be a good reference point for the kinds of creative works that I wanted to make. So just to start you off, this is, I think, the first game he ever made. It's a level for Counter-Strike. You can walk around here, by the way. And mostly it's just Cose learning the basics of
Ciao,
building a
Nicola.
3D environment. But what I like is that even though he starts from the simple aesthetic of a desert town, he then scatters these colorful abstract blobs and impossible floating crates around the level. And of course, it destroys the illusion that this actually
Perché
is
stava
a desert
doppiando
town,
l'audio, quindi stavo
and
vedendo se era il
instead this level
microfono o meno,
becomes
ed era il
a kind of
microfono.
calling card from its creator. It's like a reminder that this video game was constructed by a real person. And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? This is what I like about all of Cose's games. I mean, not that they're all fascinating as games, but that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So, it's 2008, Cose starts making these games, and he never releases any of them. He doesn't put them onto the internet, he just makes them and then immediately abandons them, and they sit on his computer forever. And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. At one point, he jokingly renamed his computer's recycling bin to Important Games Folder. So,
No,
this
che
was just
cosa?
how he worked.
Scusami, ma ha riannominato il cestino in Important Game Folder. Cioè, è una truffa. Ok, grazie che mi hai chiarito. Jump. No, cioè, per dirvi quanto tipo, cioè, lui crea giochi ed era tutto, cioè, li crea, solo che, come dire, è un po' come me. Disegni, e poi l'unica cosa che vorresti fare è buttare via tutto.
Tended to crank them out one after.
Però una cosa, mi sa che per la prima volta dovremmo mettere... Dovremmo metterla qua, non lo so. Che brutta. E che mi rompe... Ero io mutato? In che senso? Metto qui, non lo so. Mi rompe che non è precisa. Sì, questo è un livello che ha fatto nel 2008. È una mappa di Counter-Strike, è uno dei primi lavori che ha fatto Cose. Dai, lo lasciamo così per oggi, perché così almeno si leggono i sottotitoli. Ok.
To the other without even really pausing to try to understand what he had just made, until suddenly one day he
se l'è
just
mutata.
stopped. In 2011, that was it. He made his last game and then he hasn't made another one since. And that's why I've taken this opportunity to gather all of his work together, is because I find his games powerful and interesting, and I'd like this collection to reach him, to maybe encourage him to start creating again. And if the people like you who play this also happen to find his work interesting, then I'm sure it'll just send that much stronger of a message of encouragement to Cose. So thanks for joining me on this. If you have a particular interpretation that I haven't mentioned here, or if you just need to get in touch, you can email me at daveywreden@gmail.com. Okay, that's about it for introduction.
Ok.
Let's take a look at Coda's first proper game.
Ok,
As
questo
each
è proprio
game
il
is
primo
loading, I'll show
gioco.
you the date that it was completed. This first one was made in November
2008.
2008.
Sta caricando il 2008. Ah, i miei occhi. Un FPS.
This game is called Escape from Whisper, and it's one of the more generic games you'll see from Cose.
Sembra SCP. Oh, non spara più.
It kinda looks like this game was abandoned mid-development. For instance, you have this gun, which you'd think would indicate that there are supposed to be monsters or enemies somewhere, but then
Non ci
clearly
sono.
there are no enemies anywhere. You can't even reload the gun when you run
Sì,
out of
infatti non va più la
bullets.
pistola.
But ultimately we don't really know. Maybe Coda thought that actually it was complete the way that it is. And I think that we should talk about his games for what they are, rather than for what they're not.
Enemy force neutralized. Begin shield evacuation.
Non posso più sparare.
I love how you can see the bottom of the universe from this room.
È vero! Puoi vedere il fondo dell'universo. Tipo, questa è tutta la skybox. Letteralmente una box stavolta, in genere è una sfera.
Apparently this space station has a labyrinth on it. Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it.
No, volevo risolverlo. Ok.
Okay, this is the part that's interesting.
Sì.
The game has this narrative about the whisper machine and how it has to be turned off, and then you get to the engine room.
Sì. Questa? Fa molto Half-Life.
You there, in the engine room. You could save us all.
Io.
That beam is powering a whisper machine. We could disrupt it by introducing a great enough heat signature. If your body could stop the beam.
Ti devi
So
sacrificare.
much to ask, but for all of our lives, would you do it? Could you give yourself?
Ma certo che sì.
Let me pause here for a second. What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead.
Ma sono vivo. Voglio morire. Oh. Io volo.
The beam causes you to start floating.
Ops.
And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch,
Sì, è un glitch.
but Coda identifies something human about it, like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system. Or this floating could be the afterlife, a peaceful place, juxtaposed against all of the hysteria that you've just had to
grazie per il
traverse.
raid.
I don't even know. I have no idea what he was thinking, but what's clear is that after making this, something
Aspetta.
Listen!
Bentornato, gentilissimo, e siete benvenutissimi. Mettetevi comodi. Torno ad ascoltare. Sta diventando un sacco trippy, mi piace. Siamo solo al 2008, dobbiamo arrivare fino al 2015. Se ormai stanno. La catapulta, sono mutati. Esatto. E che cazzo. Con affetto però, che ci tenevo, questo è da anni che lo volevo giocare. È un piacere che sei passato, ma torno un attimo al gioco, perdonami.
lodges itself in his brain. He wants to do more of these really weird and experimental designs. So he stops work on this and moves on to a stream of tiny little games that go in all sorts of directions. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first game he made after leaving this one behind.
Non mi posso muovere. Oh,
Yup. In this game, you can only walk backwards.
puoi solo muoverti al... What? Allora, aspetta. Allora, al contrario, è facile. Così. Poi così. Ma quindi se faccio così... Oh, no, ok. Oh, that's cool. Whee!
So it's a short and relatively minimalist experiment combining motion and narrative. It is less advanced than the previous game, but actually it seems to be more focused, more complete. Code is trying to give it a unique voice rather than simply basing it on a pre-existing trope.
Sento un pesciolino. Ho un gambero. When she stops and looks, become clear. But if the future yours will be done. Mi fa senso che al femminile mi sento un po'...
It's a short little thought, it says what it wants to say, and then it ends. Didn't need anything more than that. Which to
Però...
me is why it works, because it gets out quick. Okay, next one.
Sembra novembre. Questo è creepy. You're now entering. Aspetta, 2008 è l'anno di Slenderman pure, mi sa, vero?
And that's it. Okay, the meaning of this game
L'ho
won't be
finito.
clear just yet. Please be patient with me for a few more games, and I promise you'll see what makes it interesting.
Ok. Dicembre.
Oftentimes, Coda would put bizarre titles like this one at the start of his games. I wish I'd known him at the time that he was making these early games. He would really only talk to me about his work as he was making it. Once he stopped work on a game, like, that was it. It was dead to him. And I don't agree with that at all, but what are you gonna do?
Oh, non riesco. Oddio, è simbolico che non puoi...
Once you've been slowed to an absolute crawl, the door at the top of the stairs opens. So why, if Coda's not showing these games to anyone, why bother opening the door at all? Well, to show you, I'm modifying the game here so that when you press enter, it'll bring you back up to full speed so you can enter the door for yourself.
Così. Non credo che sia contento se gli stai modificando i giochi, sai? Sarà un motivo se non vuole... To surrender.
A room that's warm and nice and filled with little ideas for games. Coda would often tell me that he didn't mind if people thought of him as cold or distant. He said that he knew that he was actually a vibrant and compassionate person, but that it takes time to really see that. It can be a very slow climb to get there.
Gennaio 2009. Ready, set, fish. Devo davvero pescare, sono pessima a pescare.
Well, this is new for Coda. It's an actual puzzle. Go ahead and see if you can solve it.
Sono un genio. Cookie. Non ci vedo. Ci sono problemi. Boh, non riesco. Yeah. Tante volte. È un indie? Sì. Cioè, ti sta facendo... Questa è tipo una carrellata di progetti che ha fatto una persona che non ha mai condiviso con nessuno. E invece questo amico li sta mettendo tutti assieme e ti sta raccontando di questo sviluppatore. Questo è il tema principale del gioco. E tante volte, vediamo. Non va molto veloce. Si accompagna anche con sbuffate e
All right, let me
bestemie.
just walk you through it. You're going to hit the switch on the outside to open the door, then hit the same switch and walk through the door before it closes. You'll see a second switch on the inside, which will open the second door.
Così? Così.
Don't forget that solution,
Sì,
because
da
we're
una
going to see
persona
this
sola.
puzzle again soon. We're going to see it a lot.
Sti tre? Non c'è lo sprint. Bella domanda.
So that seems to be it, right? You walk down a corridor, you solve a puzzle, you get to the end.
Ma invece
Simple
no.
enough. All right, now I'm going to modify the game again so that when you press enter, it'll remove all of the walls from this room.
Trippy. Oddio, gli occhi.
How about that? There was more to it than we had any way of knowing. I
Però non
actually
ci fa
find it funny
andare.
that this game comes after the stairs game since they essentially convey the opposite idea. So, in the stairs game, a dull exterior concealed a rich interior. And then, in this level, a dull interior hides this fantastic outer world. Either way, I think that the point is the same, is that most of the time you don't get to know what you're missing, or even that you're missing anything. That's not your role as a player. So if your role here is not to understand, then what is it?
Oh! Seconda parte. Ha continuato. Ok.
Aha! So, this, combined with the entering game from earlier, tells us that Code believes his games are connected somehow. It could even be that the stairs game and the puzzle game are literally connected in between this and the entering game. There's a bigger picture that all of his games are meant to play a role in, some larger meaning that we won't be able to grasp until we've seen all of them. And once we have, we can step back and start to understand what exactly that bigger picture is.
Marzo. Quanto bianco però. Non posso correre.
Let's talk about video game development for a second.
Sì.
Every video game runs on what's called an engine, which determines what the game can and cannot do. So in other words, the engine is a set of tools for game development.
The Stanley Parable è fatto
To
dallo
make all
stesso
of these
persona.
games, Coda is using an engine called Source.
Ah,
Like
Source
all
usa
engines,
lui.
Source has certain things that it does well, and it has certain things that it does poorly. One of the things that it does very well is boxy linear corridors. That's why so many of Coda's games are set in these large, flat, empty rooms, is just because he's working with what the engine does well.
Sì, perché devo
The
fare la
tools
spesa.
available to the creator
Tanto
shape
quella
what
donation
kinds
si
of
abbassa ogni
creative
volta che
work
devo
they're
fare la
gonna end up
spesa.
making.
Anzi, devo
You might
cambiarla di
consider
nuovo
paying
perché
attention to the
li ne ho usati per
architecture in
fare la
Coda's games
spesa.
to notice how they seem to stem from an engine that's very good
Che
at
non so quanto
producing
senso ha farlo
linear,
rimanere
boxy
fisso quando in
corridors.
realtà li sto spendendo per mangiare. Che il punto della donation sarebbe, sarebbe il cibo, eccetera. Cose. Vabbè, ma quello letteralmente faccio vedere quanto mi rimane. Quello tipo sono letteralmente i soldi che ho. Oh no. Alan Wake. No. Oh no, platforming no. Mm. No, actually. Vabbè, giusto, non c'ho la barra della vita, quindi non ha senso che mi preoccupo. Capito, mi sa che la tolgo che tanto serve a poco. Ops, troppo di fretta. Va bene lo stesso. A me farebbe strano lasciarla a 50 quando in realtà non ho più quei 50, per questo però a sto punto la tolgo perché tanto devo comunque toglierla. Mi ricorda quelle cose per le mucche. Non si è chiuso dietro. Oh merda. Oh. Vabbè, ma era anche stupida da fare, solo era... In genere ogni volta che li spendo io lo segno. Perché mi sembrerebbe stupido lasciare quella cifra lì quando in realtà non ce l'ho.
This prison, funny enough, in Coda's original design, the doors stayed shut for a full hour before letting you go. If you don't mind, I think we're gonna skip that.
Però è bello che era quel tipo di persona che faceva giochi
This
così,
is
tipo
something that he and I
letteralmente
used to
un'ora dove
argue about a
aspettare.
lot. You know, whether a game ought to actually be playable, whether it means anything if no one can get through it. And
No,
I
ma lo
would always
stesso sono
defend that,
stupide da mettere
all this
tanto.
work goes into the game, why not make it playable and accessible? And so we just got into heated arguments over it, and there was one time that after one of these conversations, he went home, and a day or two later, he sent me a zip file entitled Playable Games that was
Quindi-
full of hundreds of individual games, each of which was just an empty box that you walked around in and nothing else. Believe me, I played every single one of those just to find out if there was like a gag hidden somewhere. There wasn't.
No! You lied to me. Ancora 3 pallini.
It's the puzzle again, with the exact same solution as the last time. There's still no clear indication of what makes this puzzle so special that Coda is going to return to it over and over. But I promise I'll share with you my interpretation very shortly.
Oh no.
Here, Coda begins using a kind of dialogue system that he fashioned out of the engine's chat capabilities. Use the 1, 2, 3 buttons on your keyboard to respond.
Non so cosa cambia. Non ha scritto la soluzione per loro. Cioè, anche se io faccio sto dialogo, non ce l'ho. Trip. Riferimento a quell'altra creepypasta. Che non è una creepypasta. È più una teoria all'interno dei giochi.
And so we make one last descent down to the final floor of the level. It's a lamppost. Okay, I can't tell you quite why, but for some reason, Cose fixates on this lamppost. It's going to appear at the end of every single one of his games from here on out. I'll tell you what I think. I think that up to this point, he's been making really strange and abstract games with no clear purpose, and maybe you can only float around in that headspace for so long. Because now he wants something to hold on to. He wants a reference point. He wants the work to be leading to something. He wants a destination. Which is what this lamppost is. It's a destination. We're gonna see it in the work as well. His games are just gonna become a lot more cohesive, a lot more fully developed, with more of a clear idea behind them. And as we go, that idea will get clearer and clearer and clearer.
Davvero? Oh no, commenti dei giocatori.
So first off, I'm sure you can deduce this, but this game is not
No, it's
connected to the
cheap for
internet.
you.
All of the notes that you're gonna see have been written by Cose. This was actually the first game of his that I ever played. This was shortly after I met him at a weekend game jam in Sacramento, where I grew up. I saw him working on this very level, and it was just so different from anything that anyone else was doing. So right away I was like, I have to be friends with this person. In retrospect, I think I was probably a bit too pushy trying to get his attention. I was over-enthusiastic. But he was very gracious about it and very patient with me. And I cooled off eventually. Oh, feel free to skip over any of these notes if they're not doing anything for you. Nothing extra is going to happen if you read all of them.
Sicuro, mo mi hai
To me,
tentato.
they convey a sense of loneliness. I see this person who's filled with thoughts and feelings and beliefs and has no way to express them except as scattered and unheard voices in a game that wasn't meant to be played. But it's ironic, isn't it? That in playing this game and seeing how alone Cose often felt, that we get to know him better and actually kind of connect with him. And I have to be honest with you, this idea is really seductive to me. That I could just
Balls.
play someone's game and see the voices
Just
in their
words.
head and get to know them better and have to do less of the messy in-person socializing. I could just get to know you through your work. I think this is why I always liked Cose's games so much, is because it felt like they let me have that connection. I felt as though he was inviting me personally into his world. And then I feel less lonely too.
Non so se ci arrivi. No, muro invisibile. You lied to me. Tranquilla, pure io sto una merda, ti voglio bene, notte notte. Mm. Addirittura. Me too, me too. Non è incastrato. Mm. That's true. Mm. E tu, stessa cosa.
At the end of this level, we're going to see the puzzle again. And here, I'll tell you what I think the puzzle means. Each of these games represents an idea that was on Coda's mind at the time that he was making it. And the puzzle is a way of closing the door on a previous chapter of his life before moving on to the next one.
Praticamente sono delle raccolte di pseudo giochi che ha fatto questa persona. Sono tutte prese da una storia vera questa. Quella che man mano ci racconterà sotto pelle, che ancora tipo è solo tipo ehi, faccio vedere i progetti che faceva il mio amico. Tutto normale, finora. E siamo tutti sconnessi, tutti che non hanno senso, tutti i giochi che ha fatto tanto per farli. Ma ti fa solo vedere come lo sviluppo e cosa man mano è cambiato nella sua vita, quindi è normale che non ci capisci niente. Ed è per questo che tutti quanti hanno odiato questo gioco. Ho fatto gli stessi di The Stanley Parable. Dallo stesso, anzi. Ancora 3 puntini.
In each of his games, after exploring a theme that, he might find difficult, Coda can then place this puzzle that he knows has a reliable solution, he understands exactly how it works, and so it gives him a simple mechanism for moving on.
Sì, ma hai fatto lo stesso ragazzo che l'ha fatto. È lo stesso creatore di Stanley che ti sta narrando sta cosa.
And because there's this dark area between the doors, a space between spaces, before you move on, you get to pause. Just for a moment, a few seconds to reflect on and let go of the events that led you here. To step back and connect the pieces together. To grasp at that elusive bigger picture.
Oh no. Non mi piace quello che vedo in fondo.
Okay, this one is tough. It's gonna kind of just spin its own wheels for a few minutes. Hang with it.
È fissato con i cerchi. Oh no.
See, this is it. The whole game. And there's nothing that's particularly interesting about it. You just walk to the end of a hallway. Except, for some reason, Coda gets really fixated on this prison that has all of this modern furniture. And I don't know why, but he decides he needs to revisit this prison. He's gonna start over, use the same assets, turn it into something else. Okay, cool. Here's version 2.
In the center. A giant hole in the ground. Ah. Adesso non mi dai retta. Io volevo una foto di un cavallo gigantesco. Niente, non mi dà retta. Sì, infatti.
there's a bit more to this one, but still it's not really communicating anything. It's kind of just weird for weirdness' sake.
That's cool. Mi sembra lì che...
So, okay, he throws it out and starts over. This time he comes at the prison idea from a different direction.
Fotoframe.
And of course, now the table is gone and you can't begin the chain of events to escape. Here's a version where there are no bars, but you can't actually get to the well. And then a version where the inside of the prison is the outside and the outside is the inside. Let me just blink you real quick through a few more of these. I mean, he really unloaded on this prison idea. There's nearly a dozen of them. Personally, I think it's awful to watch this, to see a person basically unraveling through their work. And for what? Like, at what point do you just go, maybe there are game ideas other than this prison that I could be working on? But Coda doesn't have that voice telling you to stop, that particular mechanism of defense against yourself. Without it, you just spiral. And so he keeps going and going and going and going and going, and then he hits on something. And he likes it. And that's it. He's done. He stops making prisons. This is the very last version of the prison game that he created, and the reason I think it works is that the prison is not actually in it. It's a conversation. And so this is what Coda wants, is to be able to talk to someone, to share what's on his mind, and to
A me
get some
piace,
good advice from
onestamente.
someone who knows.
Infatti so che non mi piacerà per nulla, non è ancora neanche nel punto culminante del gioco, qua siamo ancora all'inizio. Se questo è angosciante, aspetta dopo. Oh, that's fuck up. Sì, praticamente sì, e poi tutta la loro relazione tra appunto lui, che è il creatore di Stanley Parable, e Coda, che è un altro sviluppatore, che però, a differenza dell'altro ragazzo, non ha mai pubblicato nessuno dei suoi giochi, non li faceva mai vedere a nessuno. Quindi è un po' un viaggio a ritroso su questa persona, che è tutto tratto da fatti veri, quindi... Ehi,
I can see why he considers this a
Oh,
fitting
Dandy.
conclusion to the prison games. After all of the obsession and
Sì.
frustration,
posta...
just to be told by someone you can trust that things are going to be okay. Wouldn't that be nice? So what would it look
Però
like
minchia,
if
buono che
Coda
faceva un
wanted to make
gioco
a
ogni
game about
tot
talking to
mesi.
someone other than himself?
Cioè, un miracolo! Che sono mappe molto semplici, però minchia le faceva.
To me, this environment is meant to represent Coda's puzzle, with the two doors on either side and a dark transitional space between. You'll notice that the quality of the art is a step up from previous games, including this new and improved chat system, which he started using from this point on. From here on out, he begins putting much more effort into the visual polish of his work, and this particular game took 2 months to create as a result.
Un miracolo che c'è pure della musica decente. No. Too stupid. No, no. Ok.
After the intense set of prison games, this house cleaning level almost feels like cleansing. It's the moment after a particularly difficult or traumatic experience where you just need to let it sit and digest inside of you, and eventually cohere into something meaningful. I know that Coda really liked this game. Of all of his work, actually, this was the only one that he called me up to ask me to come over and look at it. This was during a period of a few months where he was like grossly happy all the time, just walked around with a constant smile on his face.
Ah, scusa. Uffa. Rilasciava, non so neanche se lo fa più come lavoro in effetti. E questo qua tipo è un gioco che riassume dal 2009 fino al 2015-2010 forse, i giochi che faceva. Che ripeto non li pubblicava mai, cioè magari li finiva ma li faceva solo vedere a persone estremamente fidate. Ancora!
I'm glad he made this. I'm glad he found some peace.
Sì. Questione.
But, of course, it can't last.
No!
The music stops, your companion is gone, it's time to leave. The door at the top of the hill is now open as well. Again, you can't stay in the dark space for too long. You just can't. You have to keep moving. It's how you stay alive.
Ce la farà? Magari sarà nella lista degli eletti. Mi sta un po' deprimendo sta
Which is the
situazione.
whole point of the puzzle doors, right? That sooner or
Infatti
later
anche
you
per
have to
questo
pick
volevo
up and
giocarlo,
move.
magari
I
per
really thought
rivedere
that
quel
was the
punto di
point of it.
vista mi aiutava. Settembre 2009.
This one gets a bit goofy.
Oh no! No, lieta. Lieta. Io l'avevo visto tutto molti anni fa, quindi non mi ricordo perfettamente le parti in mezzo, però la parte finale mi ha abbastanza aveva segnato all'epoca. Però ripeto, secondo me non è per tutti sta roba.
About halfway through the game, the perspective shifts.
Tipo Sì, perché è molto...
And you play as the teacher. And suddenly, you discover that your teacher is just as bigoted and afraid as you are. Oh, and also you can move around the classroom now.
Posso? Oh, posso. Mi interessano queste cose in grigio. No, ma il lampione è un modo che ha lo sviluppatore per, diciamo, è tipo... È la fine del gioco. Lo usa sempre per indicarti la via, la destinazione. È bello quel buco nero. Sembra un occhio, è fighissimo. Sauron. Devo fare quello in grigio. Oh. Andiamo con il giallo. Una pausa. Luca. Bella la terza. Poi giustamente mi segue.
I fell pretty hard for this one. I feel like it's one of the most relatable experiences that you can have. To assume that some other person is perfect and totally fulfilled in every way, and completely miss all of the little flaws that make them painfully human. I think about this game a lot these days.
Gennaio 2010.
This one took a lot longer than all the others for Coda to make. It was 4 months between this and the last one. That's twice as long as it took him to make any other game before this, and it's not like it's particularly complex, so I remember I found that a little strange at the time.
No, comunque una cosa, non me ne vogliate. È perché non si vede niente. Scusate. Oh! You're so kind. Where is the bedroom? What are you doing? Ah. Oh, sorry. Do it again, sorry. Mi attacco al palo. Ciao Francesco. È un meta gioco, non so neanche più come... Ecco, devo fare... Basta prigioni, però... Ho capito che hai dei conflitti interiori, però... Non ti fa bene. Tu sei giù. Mamma mia!
The game ends with this eerie premonition of what's going to happen next in Coda's life. The solution to social anxiety, to fears of having to perform and having to chase success, the answer for Coda is to withdraw, to hide himself away. Which is what leads to scenarios like the stairs that slowed you down several games ago, where it just becomes harder and harder to access Coda's inner landscape because he keeps retreating. He just keeps backing away from possible connections to anyone other than himself. And to be honest, I didn't consider it very healthy when I first played this game. You know, it looked to me like he was trying to justify the idea of just disconnecting yourself from the world. And that wasn't what I wanted for him or for his games. Because I feel like a lot of his games are inviting me to connect with this person, to bring him closer. But what can you do?
Comunque, ripeto, tu che sviluppi soprattutto, credo che dovresti giocarlo. Cioè, fa vedere dei lati che non... Devo chiudere gli occhi? Sicuro? Ok, sentirò l'eco allora, sti cazzi. Ho aperto gli occhi. Sei una porta gigante. No, mo si accorgono che ho letto perché... E se ne accorgono.
You should probably open your eyes if you haven't already. It's pretty much impossible to solve
Sì,
otherwise.
infatti.
And there is a solution, by the way.
Oh. E non l'ho trovata la soluzione. Sono tutti ciechi. Oh no. I puntini di nuovo. No, questo qua mi ricordo che era famoso quando è uscito perché già lo sviluppatore era conosciuto perché faceva cose molto molto, come dire, particolari. Sì, tipo li fa molto meta, non li puoi neanche considerare giochi a mio parere. Tipo è un modo di vedere le cose. È true. L'ho fatta!
Like I said, I was getting concerned. First off, he's never been this explicit in his work about exactly what he's thinking. So, where's that coming from? But then, even weirder, his work has potentially stopped being an outlet for him. Not like he's having trouble iterating on ideas, but he literally just can't think of new ideas anymore. And in person, he was being a lot more distant than usual. Like, you know how sometimes a person will just deflect anything that you say in order to keep themselves disconnected all the time? It was that kind of thing. Here was the point in my relationship with Cose where I really started to wonder if he needed my help in some way. His games are going to get more desperate from here on out.
Sì, da qua in poi
After this
diventa
game,
molto
it's
più
almost
brutto.
6 months before he finishes something new.
Dicembre 2010. I miei occhi però. Oh. Mamma mia, quello che mi sento io. Ma tutte e due si sembrano. Non è lontana?
If the last game featured Cose talking explicitly about his creative frustrations, this one turns it up to 11. Now, put yourself in my shoes playing this. Here's a friend whose work is exhibiting signs of struggle, frustration, anxiety, depression, even. And yet, still, he keeps making games. He keeps throwing himself into the grinder even when he clearly doesn't have the energy for it anymore. Why? What is it for? Because from my perspective at the time and just what I knew of him, this was a result of how isolated he was. He was in his own little bubble, just sitting at his computer all day, not really showing these games to anyone, not releasing them onto the internet, and so he didn't have anyone outside of himself to connect with. He had no outlet to ground himself on.
Buonasera David. Bentornato.
You can't talk yourself out of loneliness. It doesn't work that way. You can't be the one writing both the questions and the answers. Then there's no movement. Then there's no circulation. If all of your anxieties are being channeled into your work, then if the work ever fails, you have no backup and you're just going to crash.
Le mie risposte. Mamma mia quanto la capisco sta cosa.
Seeing this game at the time that he made it, it looked really unhealthy to me. I was watching him do this to himself, and I hated it. I hated seeing him so trapped. It's like, video games are not worth this amount of suffering. This is someone I really cared about, and I used to get so much joy out of seeing him create. For him to suddenly become angry and frustrated like this, it was the worst thing for me. I don't know. This is what I felt at the time. I don't know how else to explain it. I wanted it to stop more than anything. It never felt so rotten. I needed more than I had ever needed anything for this to stop. But it didn't stop. After finishing this one, Cose takes another 7 months and comes up with a new game.
Maggio 2011. Marzo, non so leggere. Machine. Oh, se è la stessa di prima sarà meraviglioso. Ok. Brutal. No, quiet. Lo stesso nome dello sviluppatore. Poisonous?
And of course, it's the machine.
Movimentata. Però nulla di grave, bello. Non ti parlo neanche che sto per bene. Non assomiglia un po' al simbolo della... No, ma forse mi sbaglio. Oh, sembrava la Valve. Oddio. Non li considererò mai amici. Grazie per il raidino, benvenuti. No, si vede il trucco che ho per gli alert, ripperoni. Grazie per il raid, welcome. Buonasera. Buonanotte, Ulf, sogni d'oro, tranquillo ancora. Grazie infinite per il raidino, è un piacere. Riposa bene. Sono entrambe orribili. I got a gun. Oh. Beh, devo distruggere tutto il gioco, quindi. Diciamo che è un gioco che fa vedere lo sviluppo di giochi attraverso la visione dello sviluppatore stesso, quindi è molto meta come cosa e non saprei spiegarlo bene, ti
So
giuro.
now the work is becoming self-destructive. And I'll tell you, at the time that I first played this game, shortly after he made it, here's what I'm thinking to myself.
È vero, non c'è
I'm
il
thinking
bang
that
bang.
Code is stuck in his own head, and that it's having a very negative effect on him, and that all he needs to do is just start showing his work to people, to get some actual feedback on his games. It might get him out of isolation. And so, as I'm thinking this, I realize that I could be the one to initiate it. Because it would never occur to Coda to start actively soliciting feedback, so what if I did it for him? If he could see the difference it would make to have more actual conversations with other human beings, would that bring him out of his mental spiral? Would it give him confidence in himself? Would it bring meaning back into his work?
È molto bello, però... Cioè, se hai giocato tipo The Stanley Parable, penso che lo apprezzi, perché è molto... è strano. Cioè, è strano ma bello a mio parere. A me piacciono perché ti fa vedere comunque tratto da una storia vera, da... Ma è molto molto particolare. La
So I started
porta!
showing Coda's work to people. I took this one, and the islands which you just played, the theater, the notes, the house cleaning game, and some of the prison escape games. I brought them to people that I knew and trusted. I asked their opinions. And the great part is that they really loved his games. You know,
Ma lui non voleva
kind of
farli
always
vedere
just
al
to give
mondo,
them some
però.
external reference point, but they genuinely loved his work. There was nothing for him to be afraid of.
Qua iniziano a non trovarsi più loro due. Non so come farlo.
Can you see why I felt like this was the right thing to do? Because it's the thing that I always feel like I need, to be told that my work is good, that I am good. When someone really connects with a thing that I've made, when they see themselves purely in my work, there's nothing that feels better. And I got to give that very same feeling to my friend. I did something... I really felt like I'd done something good, like Like I was a good person. I felt like there was a friend who was
Non
in
posso
trouble
smettere,
and was
non
unhappy
posso
and
toglierla, voglio
maybe
solo
didn't like
sparare.
themselves, and I could fix it. If I could give him this gift, maybe I could fix the problem. When they told me how much they enjoyed his games, it was the best feeling. It was the absolute best feeling. It made me feel so happy. So beautifully, beautifully happy. So anyway, Coda finishes this game, and then really he just kind of takes off for a while.
Hai fatto bene.
So this is June of 2011, and I didn't hear anything from him for several weeks, I guess. And so out of nowhere, one day I get an email, and it's got a private link to a new game of Coda's. This one is called The Tower, and to my knowledge, it's the last game that Coda ever made. So let's take a look.
Ok. Giugno 2011. La torre. Adoro la scelta bianco-arancione.
And this is where I have trouble saying anything meaningful about Coda's work. Because more than anything else, the tower just feels distant. It feels like it's trying to distance itself from the world. It's a very cold game. This room
Control, sei
actually
tu.
has a maze in it.
A me piace, non è così freddo. Porca troia, non
Except
farlo mai
that
più.
all the walls of the maze are invisible. And then every time you touch one of the walls, there's this awful flashing and noise, so the experience is really miserable. The game goes beyond not being meant to be played, it
non lo
actually seems
muovo.
to despise the player for trying to play it at all. But I do want to show you the rest of the levels, so
Press
when you're ready
enter.
to continue, press enter and I'll put a bridge over the maze.
Ah. Ma ti rendi conto che normalmente dovresti giocarlo con quei flash? Ma siamo pazzi.
And to be fair, it's not like this is the first game that's needed some modification to be
No,
playable.
non è il primo, infatti.
Like the house cleaning game. You know, that one used to actually loop the cleaning chores and you just cleaned a house forever. I had to cut it off so that you could exit the house and the game would actually end. But that game had an idea that it was actually trying to communicate. What's the deeper idea behind the invisible maze?
Sofferenza.
The only way past this challenge is to randomly guess the 6-digit code. Like the invisible maze, it's frustrating to me, because it's the opposite of everything else that Coda has made. It doesn't encourage thought or engagement. It doesn't ask anything of me, except a lot of my time. If I could have reached him during this time, then maybe I could have asked him, but I couldn't. I still don't really understand why this is here. I'll put the code on the ground for you here, though, so that we can move on.
Grazie. Ma è scappato. S'ha inceppato, sempre se l'ho dato. Bravo, ti voglio bene. S'ha inceppato. Sei il numero uno. Anche te. No. Sto un po' ragionando sul fatto perché gli faceva
The switch to
così.
open this door is actually on the other side of the door, meaning that it's literally impossible to solve from this side. So even if you somehow brute forced your way through the first 2 challenges and you got to this point,
Non
there's
riusciresti
actually
ad
just
andare
no
avanti.
way to progress. And it's scary for me, the idea of Coda cutting himself off entirely, just saying, you know, that's it, that's the end of the conversation, not giving me any way to fix the problem. I feel like a failure, I guess.
Mi viene i
when I can't
brividi perché facevo così
fix
io
the
molto
problem.
tempo fa.
But I can open this door for you, so let me do that.
Quindi posso anche capire perché fa così.
Was I a failure for not understanding this game? I mean, I don't know why I would be. It's not like everything needs to have a solution, but I feel it somehow. I feel like I failed, and I don't understand why. I remember, it's June of 2011. I'm playing this for the very first time, and as I'm playing, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know this person. I have
Thank
no
you.
idea who this person
Benvenuti.
is. It wasn't the
Sì,
guy I
sono
knew.
tutte
It wasn't my
tematiche
friend.
che sento, che ho... Mm. Grazie infinite per il raid, benvenuti. Benvenuti. Chiedo vegna, ma niente suono alert o rumori vari perché voglio apprezzare il titolo, siccome sta letteralmente parlando cuore a cuore. Quindi, però... spero che siate comodi. Chiedo vegna. Forse non è la live più serie e tristi che ho mai fatto, però sentivo di doverla fare perché ne ho bisogno. Ciao, come stai? Buonasera. Ne approfitto per bere, fatelo pure voi. Rinfrescatevi. Bottiglione. E lo so. Stiamo morendo di sonno, nessun problema. Ancora, gentilissimo per il radino. Faccio un giro di shot out. Aspetta. Vieni qua, non so scrivere.
Hey, listen.
Aspetta. Perché ho fatto ESC? Andiamo bene. Scricchiata alle spalle. Mi ci voleva. Tra l'altro... Ok. Io potrei stare meglio. Sono contenta che stai bene. È la cosa più importante. Io andrò meglio.
Hey, listen.
Schiacciate sul linkino. No, tranquilla. Già fisicamente sto ancora male. Infatti, tipo, adesso sta aumentando la temperatura per il mal di pancia, quindi... Però sto
I
bene.
had come to so many
Cioè,
conclusions from looking
sopravvivo.
at all of his work up to
Ma
this
figurati,
point, and
grazie a
then
te
suddenly
semmai.
none of them.
Tempo fa volevo fare anch'io giochi del genere, però a vederli così da fuori è davvero... non è sana come cosa. Non è sana, cioè posso capire che vuoi mettere i tuoi sentimenti, vuoi mettere
I had been trying to, though. That was the
come
thing.
stai.
For years, I was trying to get to know him, to
Però non è
understand who he
sano, non è il
actually
modo
was
giusto di
and what he
farlo.
stood for. I asked him so many times to please just tell me what his games mean to him. I asked him please to tell me what the 3 dots mean. And he
Sono
wouldn't.
sempre quei tre pallini che non so cosa. Comunque da quanto il mal di pancia passa, per il resto sono ancora un po' in crisi artistica o di vita, devo dire, perché mi sento sempre a un punto morto della mia
I
vita.
just felt so strongly that if I could have connected
Quindi
with him, that if I could have somehow made his work my own, that I would finally be once and for all
non so quanto
happy.
serva che me ne lamento
It was
perché non
that I
cambia mai
needed
niente.
to see myself in someone else. I
Però ne
needed
sono consapevole.
to be someone other than me. But he stopped and left. And it felt somehow like I had failed. Where did I screw up?
Condividendo i suoi lavori col mondo intero quando lui non voleva. L'aveva
I'm the
chiesto.
reason that you stopped making games, aren't I?
L'aveva
It's because
chiesto.
of what I did. I poisoned it for you.
Potete così criptici con le persone che scrivere non è sano. È meglio di nulla. È un modo per esprimersi, però tipo adesso che l'ho detto crisi, vero? Non Chris, no, Chris va di retro, mamma mia. Sì, esatto, io odio Chris, sono l'unica persona al mondo a cui fa schifo quel gioco. Tipo, adoro l'arte di quel gioco, ma fa cagare in termini di gameplay. E non è che si parla così della depressione comunque. Questo, porca troia, se me la sta facendo rivivere tutta quanta. Io stavo così qualche anno fa, mamma mia se
I
stavo
don't think I
così.
ever told you this, but when I took your work and I was showing it to people, it actually felt. It felt as though I were responsible for something important and valuable.
Era... Te l'aveva chiesto di non farlo, tu l'hai fatto lo stesso. The personal spirit impossible to begin to
And
find solution.
the people who played them, they treated me like I was important. They really listened and cared about what I had to say. Even though I was showing your work, it was. I felt good about myself. Finally. For a moment, while I had that, I liked myself.
Così... È vero che li cambiava pure.
And then you stopped, and I didn't have anything left to show people. I
Ci
just
sarà un
had
motivo
to
se si è
be with
fermato.
myself. And as soon as that happened, there was no feeling at all. Nothing. Less than nothing. What does that mean?
No. Non li perderne interesse. Mamma mia, che cosa brutta. Oh no, 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 no. Oh no. Oh no, è famoso sto corridoio. No, c'è solo tipo... No, jumpscare no.
I'm afraid that I did something really stupid because I don't like myself.
Madonna, che casino. Ho sospirato.
That's why I'm releasing this collection of your work, is because I haven't been able to find any other way to reach you. I've tried everything. And so a part of me has hope that if I put this compilation out into the world, and if I put my name on it, that maybe enough people will play it
Ma
so that
Nenzi,
it'll
sei pure
find its
messo
way
il
to
nome
you, so that I
sopra.
can tell you that I'm
Ma sei
sorry.
cretino.
I know I screwed up.
Ma sei
If I apologize to you
stronzo.
truly and deeply, will you start making games again?
No.
Please. I need to feel okay with myself again. And I always felt okay as long as I had your work to see myself in. I mean, is something wrong with me?
Non ci sono,
Because
tranquillo che
I
non ci
know
sono,
that
sono
I
io
did
che
an
mi
awful
incazzo.
thing, and I'm doing it again right now. Like I'm showing people your work, but I
Non hai
can't
capito un
stop myself from
cazzo.
doing it. That's how badly I need to feel something again. Like I'm an addict. There has to be something wrong with me. Can I
Sì,
apologize?
la
What if I tell you I
testa.
was wrong? Will that work? Will that fix it? I don't know. I don't think it will, but there's nothing else that I can do. Just tell me what you want. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please.
Non me ne
Start making
frega
games
se
again. Please
ti
help me. Please
scusi.
give me
Sei
some
una
of whatever it is that
merda.
makes you complete. I want whatever that wholeness is that you just summoned out of nothing and you put into your work. You were complete in some way that I never was. I want to know I want to know how to be a good person. I want to know how not to hate myself. Please. I'm fading, and all I want is to know that I'm going to be okay.
Tu devi stare ok, ma l'altra persona no. Proprio no. Epilogo. Sì, dura malapena un'ora e mezza. Circa. Anche se non so se epilogo è più una cosa riferita appunto allo... quanto è fancy. Questo sviluppatore ha iniziato facendo mappe custom di Counter-Strike, by the way. E molto a tempo. Oddio, davvero sono...
More love, more praise, more people telling me that I'm good.
Questa cosa mi fa incazzare, che l'avevo completamente rimosso, che tipo...
It's like a disease.
Che i suoi lavori li spacciava cioè perché sì, sono belli di farli conoscere al mondo. Se ti ha detto che non vuole, non vuole. Una cosa ti ha chiesto di fare. Se li vuole condividere col mondo lo farà, se no so cazzi suoi. Ci sono un sacco di artisti e sviluppatori che non hanno neanche la minima di cos'è un social, non li usano proprio perché se li tengono per loro. E stanno bene, stanno bene così, ed è una cosa molto più sana. Che questa smania di dover condividere, fa vedere tutte le cazzate che fai a tutti. No, a volte devi tenere per te. Che è la cosa migliore. Che ti fa stare bene, che sono cose tue. Come diceva il saggio, a volte il dipinto è anche bello che se te lo appendi in camera tua lo guardi. Perché è tuo. È tuo e basta. Non devi metterlo in giro e perché vuoi dell'approvazione da degli sconosciuti. No, a volte puoi tenerlo per te. Questo ne stava talmente tanto facendo diversi anche dello stesso gioco, tipo ho avuto... No, mi arrabbio sì, perché cazzo... Se mi arrabbio vuol dire che è fatto bene, cazzo. Cazzo. Questo è molto, molto metaforico. Se non era fatto bene non mi arrabbiavo. Oh, tu le conosci le backrooms finalmente? Che stavo citando prima ma nessuno... Che è una roba molto, molto... abbastanza di nicchia. Che se non sbaglio era nata per una roba strana di GTA, se non ricordo male. GTA 3, forse? Anzi no, in realtà è una roba tipo dello spazio, non lo so, una roba strana. Non ti ricordi di sto posto?
The thought of not being driven by external validation is unthinkable. Like, I actually cannot conceive of what that would be like.
Fa tanto... Ma più che altro, almeno leggersi un attimo, sai, le persone, insomma, perché appunto sono due sviluppatori, insomma, The Backdoor ci incastrano, forse, direi di sì. O anche solo
I think I need to go.
leggere qualcosa al riguardo, non per forza giocarlo, che ovviamente molti tipo sembra un po' un walking simulator in effetti, perché fondamentalmente non si fa tantissimo, perché è più una storia interattiva, diciamo, molto perché lui li fa sempre molto basiche. Oh, di nuovo la prima mappa, quella di Counter-Strike. Informazioni più che altro. Io una cosa che mi tormenta è che questa cosa coda c'era anche un altro gioco. Sera, perdonami, i suoni sono mutati per questo motivo qua. È volato. C'è un gaglioffo bello. Quanto è bello gaglioffo. Che coda, che altro gioco dove c'era... Che secondo me è la stessa persona, solo che in quel gioco l'hanno raccontato in maniera diversa, che è The Magic Circle, che l'ho portato molto tempo fa, ma c'è nel canale. E, cioè, non so se è la stessa persona, se è lo stesso sviluppatore, che l'hanno raccontato... Che era la ragazza? Non mi ricordo. Ciao a te, semmai. Oggi sono un pochino rottina. La pancia va molto meglio. Però sento tipo... sono rimasti i segni. Vabbè, sono tante storie così. E che... Infatti non so se in un gioco o nell'altro hanno preso un nome così simile. E l'hanno romanzato, non saprei. Buco! Buco! Oh, de culo. E non c'è. Ma si muove. Eppur si muove. Hai portato i cerotti. O il Pattex va bene lo stesso. Via. Piango che non c'è lo sprint, by the way. Però è una cosa che pretendo in tutti i giochi, anche se sono giochi di questo tipo sperimentali. Dovete mettere lo sprint. Mettete shift, non vi costa. Eppur si muore. Con la ir. Autosprint. L'ho imposto, magari c'è la command line, non lo so, magari. Che poi, cos'era? Con Source è fatto, mi sembra. Cioè, ne stavo nominando prima, che è il motore che usava Coda per programmare. Sì, io lo lascio dritto perché... pressione mia, sono tonta. Alle spalle, perché dovrei? Guarda, 1, 2, 3, opla! Non c'è niente. Se intendi le mie, se no c'è ancora lo stesso spirito che c'è sempre tutte le sere. Magari c'è davvero. No. Ansia comunque, ma quello che non è un horror. Tipo, non è un horror, ma mi sta facendo cagare sotto. A me sta facendo incazzare. Il che vuol dire che, ripeto, è fatto bene, vuol dire che sto sentendo qualcosa. Che belle queste skybox, scegli sempre belle. Che questo è molto simbolico, immagino. Però, guarda che bello sfondo per il desktop. A big, 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 big mates. Siamo proprio in centro noi. Molto trippy. Guarda le stelle che sono più carine, senza offesa. Guarda che bello che è. Guarda, da così sembra Mass Effect. Quando metti le skybox.
Turn back from this cave. You said, let me prove that I'm brave. Let me keep going. But the cave goes
Turn back.
for miles.
A parte che anche il testo mi sembra strano della canzone. No, no, non è finito. Non credo che. Non mi pare che non finiva così. Aspetta.
But I know that you're strong.
C'è un'altra cosa che manca.
Turn back. Turn back.
Sicuramente tuttora al finito, sarebbero capaci. Senza gli aiuti. Non mi ricordavo che finiva così. Finiva così. Qualcosa non quadra. Suspicious. L'avevo già visto, cioè non giocato ma visto, che non ho avuto mai il coraggio di giocarlo. E non mi ricordavo che finiva così, onestamente. Comunque ad riposare vale la pena riflettere sui titoli psicologici, assolutamente. Pure ricordavi male, forse l'ho rimosso. L'ho rimosso con un altro gioco, vuoi immaginare? No, l'ho davvero rimosso con un altro titolo, perché sta cosa della... No, l'ho confuso. Notte, notte, ma io non me ne va. E Dandy che va a dormire. È ancora sogni d'oro, e se vuole bene. Sei sempre patato. Io sì, però. Allora aspetta. Aspetta.
Clatù, Verata,
Mo partono tutti.
Vana.
Ce l'ho fatta. Buonanotte Andy, buonanotte Nick. Riposate bene. Adesso ci sono, ho finito, posso rimetterli. Adesso che ho finito, sì. Infatti risistemiamo tutto. Vedi perché alle volte invidio quelli che hanno una schermata tipo Twitch. Altro braccio, vieni qua. Braccio della buonanotte. Dormite bene, sogni d'oro. E adesso sistemiamo tutto da capo. Il coffee che quando mai che se lo cagano. Ah già. Sì, passato. Adesso mi brucia solo un po' la testa, ma sto bene. Pancia sta molto meglio. C'ho ancora le fitte, pochino, però sto bene. Grazie che ti preoccupi, non voglio farti preoccupare. No, credo che l'incazzatura mi ha fatto passare il mal di pancia. Evviva! Che bello! Io adoro arrabbiarmi. Fa così bene. Allora rimettiamo le cose. Che devo andare a dormire, vadi, non mi fate problemi. Però vi giuro, che bello arrabbiarsi. Ogni tanto ci sta. Ti dà quella carica in più, non so come spiegarvi, dà quel guizzo. Breve ma intenso. Molto breve ma intenso. Ho un ricordo completamente sbagliato della parte finale, non ci posso credere. Che impressione. Tenere dentro fa male a volte, infatti. Io mi permetto di chiuderlo qui, quindi stiamo un attimo qua.